Hey there, and welcome to the Bold Badass Business Show, where we bring you badasses from all over the world. And today I'm excited to have in the house yet another amazing person I got the privilege of meeting on the Podcasters, aka the New Media Cruise, just a couple of months ago. And that is Lori McDowell, the Retreat Strategist. And I have to tell you that Lori has a long and excellent career in the corporate world. But 3 years ago, she made the leap with some help, but she made the leap to start her own business. And now she really helps people reinvent themselves and their lives. So I want to just welcome to the show, Lori. Hi, Lori. So
Hi,
glad you're here.
Barnsley. Happy to be here. Excited to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. And I know that what we're going to talk about is really going to help people and let them think in different ways about what they offer their customers. But before we do that, I want to ask you, when was it that you knew in your life, Lori, that the corporate world just was not going to work anymore for you? What was that moment when you said, oh, Lordy lands a living, no more?
I think deep down, I always knew there was something more than corporate because I was never 100% satisfied. But it was about, almost 3 years ago when it was about 4 years ago when I was in this job that I loved. And then my
Mhm.
boss retired. And first, I was next in line, and they never even asked me if I wanted the job. And they brought in this guy who was younger than me. And the job that I loved became a job I hated. And
Mm.
at that point, I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. How could something I love become something I hate when I didn't do anything? I didn't make any changes. And it's like that. I just realized that corporate is like, has too much power over me, over my joy. And I don't want to be in that position. So that was kind of when I started looking around. And then it was about, a year later when it wasn't completely by choice, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me when I was let go from my company. And I was like, okay, great. Now I can do something I love and something that I really want to do.
All right, let's pause because I think there are probably a number of people on here who are saying, how could she say, okay, great, now I can do something I love when she's just been let go? And so many people are being let go right now, Lori. So, how did you really get into that frame of mind? What were the steps, at least a couple of steps that got you to
Right.
that point where you could say, hallelujah, hallelujah,
You
I'm
know,
free?
part of it was, the feeling. It was funny because I got fired in this horrible place. I was fired after I drove 4 hours to a meeting where I was supposed to speak. And they told me, we're firing you, go home. And it was funny. As I was driving home, I was like, I was angry. I was terrified. I had all these negative emotions. And then suddenly when I realized I didn't have to go to work the next day, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. It was like, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And at that point, it was just kind of like, what am I doing that I'm doing this something that I'm dreading it every day? I'm pushing the snooze alarm 7 times. And it was kind of like, I don't have to do that. Now, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had a little bit of savings. And I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. And if I have to, I could drive Uber or, I'll find some way I can consult. I'll find something while I figure it out. But it was just like, it was almost like enough. I've been waiting so long, and putting up with so much. And it was, I got to that breaking point where it was kind of like, I don't want to give anyone else this much power over me. And I just decided that I'm going to make it work because I jumped in because I knew at least if I was going to be unhappy, it would be because of me, not because of someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's powerful. If I were going to be unhappy, I was going to do it, it was going to be because of me and not because of somebody else. That right there is a gem. Just to think about the fact that you held the reins, even though you'd been quote unquote let go. And I know you tell this story in your book. I remember reading this story in your book and how you had driven all this way 4 hours. And then they, even before you gave your talk, they just told you to go on home. And so, of
Right.
course, everyone's sitting in the meeting thinking, where's Lori? What happened to Lori? Why isn't Lori here? Lori's supposed to be our speaker.
Yeah, it was kind of a public, a public humiliation, and it was almost like a lesson to everyone else because I was a top performer in that company.
Mm,
I was the face of the company at conferences. I just brought in the biggest client that this company ever had.
wow.
And it was funny, they wanted to make it clear that, okay, if you don't do exactly what we say, which I didn't, when my new boss wanted me to do stuff that I was against my values, I said, no, we don't do it that way.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, so if we can fire Lori, we can fire anybody. So the rest of you better just, toe the line and do what we say. And I think that's why they did it so publicly.
Mm, and so you really were kind of the martyr, so to speak, or the scapegoat for
Mm-hmm.
what was going on for everyone else. And it makes me think about the fact that especially these days, people talk about job security. And one reason why an excuse they'll give for not starting a
Right.
business is I want to
Yeah,
have job security. Well, let me tell you, job security is an oxymoron now.
it is. Yeah. And it's like when you have your own business, you have job security. You may not have income security right away. It's up and down, and but
Yeah.
but you're not going to fire yourself. So
That's right. Well, hopefully you're not going to fire
yeah.
yourself. Some some days I have felt like I should fire myself, Lori. And other days it's like, hey, you win employee of the month. Yay.
Yeah, that's true.
Manager of the month. Yay. Customer service person of the month. You've done it
You get them
all.
all.
Yeah, you get them all. You get I have a tiara actually, when I want to feel that power, I just, I put my tiara on and,
That's
it just,
funny.
I'm the queen of my business. I
Yes.
think we realize, yeah, that's very powerful that when you start your own business, you may not have income security, but you have job security as long as you're passionate and purposeful about what you're doing. And the two of those things go together, the passion and the purpose. So,
Yeah.
when did you figure out that your purpose and your passion were reinvention? Because this had been a leitmotif, a kind of theme in your life for a long time, hadn't it? But finally, you put it together.
It had. And I think it was when, I suddenly had this job and I was like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to consult? Do I want to teach? Do I want to do training? And I really wasn't sure. And it was like, I realized I always wanted to write a book and I never had time. And I have time now, so I'll write a book. Just was like, I'm going to write a book. And I was working with someone, talking to someone, a book consultant, kind of publisher, and trying to figure out I didn't even know what the book was going to be about. And we talked about like the people that inspired me. And I realized the people that inspired me were people who had had horrible things happen to them. And they reinvented something new and something better. And they just basically took that awful experience and turned it into something amazing. People who, started a nonprofit after losing a child to cancer, some people who had a disease and turned that into something amazing. And that's when I realized in writing the book, well, wow, I've done this, maybe not to that extreme, but I've reinvented myself multiple times throughout my life. And I know a lot of people that did, and that it's kind of a mindset in that, you don't have to even wait to have something horrible happen to you to reinvent yourself. You can do it anytime by practicing some of the tools that all these people things like belief, things like asking for help, believing in a higher power, facing your fears. All those things enable you to realize that you are in charge of your own happiness, that you can create the reality that you want.
And I love that you're saying you don't have to wait for some horrific event to reinvent yourself. You don't have to wait for the cosmic 2x4 to hit you on the head. You could actually, do it at any moment just with any of those things, amping up your spiritual life, or amping up maybe your health routines, or amping up some other part of your life that has been dwindling, let's say. So when you did this, I'm assuming that at the beginning it was pretty harrowing. Is that right?
It was, there were good months and bad months and questioning, is this right? And definitely a lot of reinventing. I started out thinking I would be, I'd be an author and a speaker. And I was like, okay, well, that's going to make me, a couple $100 a month to start. I can't live on that. So, and then I looked at, coaching, got some coaching certifications. and was still searching. And it wasn't until I actually did the Ikigai process, which is
Mhm.
that Japanese process, what you love, what you're great at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And that's when I came out with the Done for Your Retreats. And when I thought of that idea, it was just like, yes, this is it. It was just so clear that this is something that takes all the things I'm good at and all the things I love and puts them together. And it was just obvious. But that took a couple, of the 3 years I've been in business, that probably took about 2 of them to figure that out.
So the Ikigai process, people may or may not have heard of that. I have definitely worked with that some, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, but it has 4 parts. So could you go back over the 4 parts of
Sure.
that? And what people are looking for is the intersection between the 4 parts, correct?
Right. Yes, you're looking for the intersection, and with the help of like a chat GPT or AI at the end, you can get some clarity. So it's, what do I love? What are the things that I love to do? And you make that whole list. And then you kind of put that aside, don't look at it, and then you make the list of like, what am I great at? And you put that one aside, and then you look at, okay, what does the world need? And you kind of make that list. And then what will people pay for? And that one's a little bit hard, but you kind of, you figure that one out. But you take those lists, the intersection, what's on those lists, and then you can put it into an AI, a chat GPT or something like that, and say, this is the intersection of what I love, what I'm great at, what the world needs. And, and these are the things people will pay for. Can you give me some possible businesses? And I did that, and it came up with a list of about 15 businesses that
Mm,
fit. And
love
I
it.
looked, and a couple of them were, no, definitely not, definitely not. I don't want to do that. And then there were 3 or 4 that stood out. It's like, these kind of sound fun. And that I kind of looked through those, and that was, and of those 4 businesses, I didn't even know that they were things you could do like that. They were kind of, that's where the chat GPT comes in, because it comes up with business ideas you may not even know people get paid for. So.
I love that. That is such a smart idea to put in your 4 lists and then ask chat to do the hard work of finding the intersections and creating, possible businesses. What an awesome idea. For using chat to scour the web and come up with, aggregate all the information together. I think that's fantastic. What a great tip for everybody who is thinking about starting a business, or maybe you have a business, those of you listening, that, you feel fulfilled maybe 80%, but there's another 20% there. And you want to bring in all parts of yourself. I know that when I started my business, Lori, that was the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons that I left academia, was because I felt like I was about 75% happy. And I believed that and 75% using my abilities. And I believed I could be at 95 or 100% in terms of using my abilities and also being happy with the work I did. Plus I was working 60 and 70-hour weeks, which I know you've done as well in corporate America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There is nothing glamorous about working 60 and 70-hour weeks for someone else.
Right. Yeah,
It's
and
different
it's like
when you
when you love what you're doing, you work that long because you don't want to stop. But then that's not why you did it.
exactly, when you love, you just said it. When you work for someone, doing something you love, you work that long because you don't want to stop. You don't even realize sometimes that it's work, but when it's for someone
Mhm.
else, it really does feel like that 4-letter word, work. So, as you started writing the book, did it really reveal itself to you? And by the way, you all, I'll hold up the book for you to see, The Reinvention Mindset by Lori McDowell. Got this wonderful tree brain
I know. I love the
on the
cover. I
front.
described
I
the
love
idea
the
as
cover.
artist.
It's fabulous. And so when you started writing it, how was that process for you?
It really was very much, the book practically wrote itself. I started with, I kind of put together an outline. And then I would, my process, I would get up every Saturday morning and Sunday morning before, my family was up, and write, and I would write a chapter. And I would say 90% of the book just flowed, and it just, like, I didn't know exactly what was going to be there. And as I started writing, it just came to me.
Hmm.
And stories of, things I hadn't even thought about in years. Suddenly I was like, oh, that makes sense here. I'll put that in the book. So it was almost like my intuition wrote the book more than I did, I think. because it was funny after I wrote the book and I started taking classes and coaching certifications and learning, I was like, oh, this is in my book. Oh, this is in my book. It's like, oh, I already knew some of this stuff. So
That's wonderful. So you're finding examples of what you were learning in what you'd already written. That's a wonderful affirmation, huh? That you're on the right
yes,
path. I
yes.
love that actually for all of us when we hear something on the radio or we read a quote or we have a book come to us some way or even fall off the shelf sometimes. I have books that'll appear sometimes and I'm like, wow, where did that come from? That wasn't in my stack. And I open it up and it's got an answer or it's got a commentary really on what I'm feeling or thinking in my business. It's interesting how the universe, God, Allah, whatever you want to call that source energy, will bring us information and put it in such a way that we really can't ignore it. We've got
Yes.
to look at it.
I know even when I was deciding if I was going to write a book or not, I processed it over the weekend. And it's funny because, I'll be walking the dog with playing music and song lyrics that would tell me to do it, or I'm listening to a podcast and it was like everything was like, okay, do it, do it. Yeah, it's like, all right, I have to do it. I've just gotten like 10 or 15 messages this weekend.
That's a lot.
Uh-huh.
Usually it's sort of the holy trinity of 3 messages, but 15, that's better not ignore that one, right?
Yes.
So as you wrote this book and you were thinking about the Ikigai, I always pronounce that wrong, and you were thinking about that, and Retreat Strategist came up in your list. What did you think that the two had to in common, say reinventing yourself and being a retreat strategist?
I think every great retreat has a transformational element to it. And a transformation really is a reinvention. So the two definitely are linked in that way. And the retreat, planning retreats, hosting retreats, and planning retreats for other people is kind of like my way of helping them reinvent themselves without having them, to drop into that pit. Because the people having retreats, they have successful businesses, they're doing well. They just want, like you, they're at 80% and they want more. So it was kind of, I think the book and doing the Done for Your Retreats as a retreat strategist really did meld together well in that, my goal. I mean, my first goal was to help people reinvent themselves, and hosting retreats did that. And then I realized, well, even if I host 4 retreats a year, that's like 80 people I can help. That's great, but that's not that as many I'd like to. But let's just say I do help other people do retreats. So then I can do maybe 8 to 10, or if I have it as I grow my team, 20 or 30 retreats a year. So that multiplies the effect. And it just helping more people get that transformation without having to have the expertise to handle a retreat.
Beautiful. So basically it's all about reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
And you're helping the people within the retreats reinvent, but you're helping the people leading the retreats reinvent their businesses. And at the same time, you're reinventing. There are like 3 levels of
Right,
reinvention.
lots of reinvention there. Yeah, there's like nested, like those Russian nested dolls of
It
reinvention.
is. It's like those Russian nesting dolls. You pull it off, reinvention,
Uh-huh.
another reinvention. Well, let's reinvent again.
And
So
I
as
have
you,
to make those as giveaways.
yeah, there you go. I love that. I love that. That's a great idea. That would be super cute. You could have,
Right.
you could have a sort of paper doll. I don't know. I think it would be fun to have paper dolls be part of some kind of playbook at a retreat. I think it would
That
be
would be
interesting
fun.
because you reinvent with a paper doll. You can actually visualize or accessorize the change, the reinvention, the transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Could be fun. Um,
Right.
so as we think about this, I think everybody listening is probably thinking, what have I reinvented about myself? Or maybe thinking, oh, I need to reinvent right now. And maybe I need to take a retreat to do that. So what have been some of your favorite retreats that you've worked on and what was so great about them?
Well, I just, I may have recency bias, but I just came back from a retreat. It was actually one that I hosted last week in the island of Utila in
Mhm.
Honduras. And this one, I was doing it really because I went to this island 25 years ago and I loved it. And I went back a year later. So I had been there, and it was just one of the most magical places. And I thought, I wonder if I bring a group there, if they will have the same feeling that I did. And we planned a retreat, and I have been a scuba diver in the past. So as part of this retreat, I incorporated, if someone wanted to try scuba diving, they'd have that opportunity. And if not, they could snorkel. And it was a really magical, because the island and the people gave everyone the same feeling I had 25 years ago. We felt like the entire island was welcoming us and catering to us and helping us have the most incredible experience. And what was also really cool about it is we ended up having, the youngest person on the retreat, someone brought their toddler who was under 2 years old. And then we had another gentleman on the retreat, someone who was 77 years old. He actually was a last minute, someone had to cancel and he was able to fill in, 77-year-old man, someone who had actually lost his leg a few years ago. And between the two of them, I think they both got the biggest transformation, because it was this whole new experience. I mean, the idea of a retreat was new. The baby was learning new words, and the 77-year-old, he was like learning what a mastermind was and how to, and the workouts we do and the breath work and meditation was all new. And it was just like the whole thing was kind of seeing everything through their eyes. And it was just the whole, a great retreat has a great experience, a feeling, a transformation, and the purpose comes together where everybody leaves changed. And so that was one that I really loved, because I think we all left, with deeper connections, new experiences, and a change to ourselves.
Beautiful. And about how many people would you recommend go on a retreat? Like on that one, how many were there?
That one we had 12 people, and that was going to be, we were staying at a resort with 8 rooms. So if they were double occupancy, it would have been maxed out at 16. So I think an ideal retreat is somewhere in the 8 to 24 range. I think when you get above 24, it's almost more like a conference than a retreat, because you don't get that personal interaction. You can do it with as few as 4 to 6, but the sweet spot is probably 8 to 20, somewhere in that range. I like 12 to 16, if ideally.
And where do you find the people who come on the retreat?
Yeah, that's an interesting process. And when I work with other people, we do, filling the retreats is definitely the hardest part of a retreat. And what makes it easier to fill is when it has a clear purpose, a clear, who's it for, what is it, and what is the result you're going to get. So when you have that clear, people see themselves in it. But you find it from existing clients, past clients, prospects who always thought about working with you, referral partners. And then you always get a few people that just come from like organic, social media post or advertising. But having that clear purpose makes a difference. The really cool thing about a retreat is it's like the one piece of a business that could be fulfillment and prospecting at the same time. Because you're fulfilling, if you have existing clients, or a mastermind, the retreat could be kind of a fulfillment experience. Yet you invite those people to invite their friends, their coworkers, you open it up to new people, and suddenly you're prospecting. And when you bring the two together, you're actually, it's selling itself, because the people are, the people who have been in your program interacting with the people that are new to it, and they see what they get. And it's a great way to grow your business, because you get deeper relationships with those existing clients who want to keep coming back and bringing their friends. And then the new people really get the experience of what you're all about. So it's a great way to kind of double dip and prospect and fulfill at the same time.
I love that. Prospecting and fulfillment all together in the retreat. And certainly having those people who are already in your world bring their people, which chances are, if you like the people in your world, you're going to like the people they bring, and they're going to like you too. So the law of averages, I think, are working in your favor there with that. So what are some of the most unusual activities that you've seen embodied in a retreat or brought into a retreat? What are some of the most unusual things that
Some of the most
that
unusual. Well, there's a lot of the spiritual things like the going to various temples or doing manifestations, different types of those activities. I once did a retreat with a writing coach, and that one was really interesting because it was a lot of like sitting and writing. And I was like, oh, I never really thought of doing that as a retreat. But the people who came said they wrote like more of their books in that 2 days or 3 days than they had in like the last year. So it's just a way to jumpstart. I'm talking to somebody who wants to have a retreat to be kind of a co-working space where it's no, we're just going to go on the retreat and we're going to work and then we're going to take breaks and do something fun and then we're going to work again. I was like, well, that's unique. And I would not have thought of that. But I worked with someone who is it's a retreat. She's kind of she uses art in her business, and she helps people, reinvent or recreate themselves through art. And one of the events that she had that I helped her with it was we found a graffiti artist, like a well-known paid graffiti artist in downtown Houston. And one of the events was we got to go and help with the graffiti and help paint a mural on a wall, which was really cool.
Oh, how
So
cool.
yeah, so that's an unusual one. I'm doing one in March that people are going to actually do help people with they're they're going to come with a talk and we're going to help polish their talk, and then the talk is going to be transcribed and put into a compilation book. So they're going to leave with an actual book after a 3-day retreat, which is kind of fun. So you can become an author in 3 days.
Beautiful. So they'll have, record their chapter and then work on it, and then everyone's chapters will be put together.
Right. Yeah. I'm doing that
Fantastic.
together with a book publisher. So she said she could have, the ebook by the end of the retreat almost, or maybe a week later. And then they'll have the book a few months, a month or two later. So,
See, I think the done for you is really, and done with you are really powerful right now. People don't want to do it ourselves. We don't want
yeah.
to go it alone. It's just too hard. And our businesses go backwards. To come back to our title, why leading a retreat actually advances your business. It escalates everybody's progress so fast, a retreat. And I know that I wrote, for example, my first children's book, I wrote in a writer's retreat. The whole thing came out, in 3 days. And it came out in a really good, pretty darn good form, where there was editing, but not that much. It was the easiest part of the process, actually, then getting the acknowledgments and getting the testimonials and getting the cover work and all of that. That's the stuff that takes time. But having something where someone can come and, as you pointed out, get a specific result, like have your chapter be in an international bestseller, have a
Right.
specific
Yeah.
result, and have it happen in a period of just a few days, that is very compelling to people.
It is. And we're also going to have, they'll be leaving with their brand color or with their colors, their element, what the colors they should wear. They'll be leaving with brand photos, headshots, and a speaker reel. So we're gonna get all that in 3 days. And they'll get to stay at a mansion in Las Vegas with a pool and do some hiking and some meditation and some breath work. So
Oh, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like there's a nice self-care component to it. Do you
yeah.
find that the self-care needs to be a part of every retreat, even if it's a retreat where you're doing deep work or co-working with people?
I do, and some degree, whether like at this retreat where we had a masseuse available. It was optional, but everyone decided they wanted a massage while they
Mm,
were there. Even if you're doing deep transformational work, the three things I like to include in every retreat is some kind of self-care, enough time off to integrate. People need, like, sometimes retreats are so packed full that nobody gets a time to sit down and think or just relax. So I think retreats do need some free time. And then I like to put a kind of a community give back event into the retreat. Like we did in Utila, we went and did a beach cleanup one morning and we
mhm.
collected 150 pounds of trash. I did a retreat in Fiji, and we actually spent a day at an orphanage, talking to the children, having them tell us what they wanted to be when they grew up, playing soccer with them. I've done another retreat where we did a team build. It was a team building activity where we broke up into teams, and they had to build bicycles. It was like a bicycle building competition. And then once the bikes were built, we had some children come in and we gave them the bicycles. So I love that having that community give back part of the retreat makes it really valuable, both for the attendees and for the community where you're hosting the retreat.
I love that. And it's also one of the best ways I assume that you could ever get great press too, is having a give back part, so that you're not needing to, you're not really having to entice the press. It's such an interesting project that they want to come and give you the press because you're doing something good on behalf of the community where you're visiting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a very, very smart, savvy way to approach getting press while you're there.
Yes, no, that makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, and plus you're hopefully leaving a footprint, a positive footprint, not a Sasquatch footprint, but
Right.
you're
Yes.
leaving a positive footprint that allows you to take back future groups for retreats.
Yeah, that you're welcome. Yeah, and most of the places, we go, they're like, oh, let us know when you want to come back. So it's always really nice to be welcome back.
Relationships are everything. They really are, Lori. And I was just earlier this morning, I needed to go get my alignment done and my balance and my rotation. And then I ended up needing a battery, which I had an inkling that may be the case. But because I know the people and I've always talked with them and always joked with them and had a great time, I walked out of there and they had discounted me $154.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
I was fun and I had
Mhm.
always talked with them about their things that they cared about. Like we talk rescue animals or we talk watches. One of them has a watch company on the side and he sells watches, gorgeous watches on eBay. And this is a whole business hustle that he has. And so we always talk watches. And that kind of relationship, knowing what people care about and being able to talk with them about it, makes all the difference in the world, I think, in our
Yes.
businesses and our lives.
Yeah, that's when when you go to a company or a location. I mean, I did interviews in Fiji. We got to know the local people. We got to hear about their culture. In Utila, similar, I interviewed someone who I'm going to put on one of my shows who grew up there, had been there, and then the people who own the resort, her and her husband bought the resort 40 years ago when the island was nothing. So I love having those stories and really connecting with the local culture too. Because I know sometimes people do a retreat in a hotel or, they go to a 5-star resort. And it's like, it's great, but you're missing something if you don't leave the resort or go to the local area and see what the people who live there experience.
Amen, amen, amen. Let's repeat that. You're missing something if you just go stay in a 4 or 5-star resort. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love them. I get them in the travel
No,
club.
I'm happy to stay in them, but
And
leave one day.
and go do some activities outside, go do your whale watching or go do your work with the kids in the orphanage or, go teach a craft with them or do something, go to the market and choose the vegetables and bring them back and cook with them. But we want to have a feeling of the place where we go to. The place
Yes.
where we go to take back with
Yeah.
us. You said that all good retreats have a feeling to them. And I find that really, really insightful as well, Lori. All good retreats have a feeling theme to them. So what have been some of the feeling themes that you've seen that you think worked really well for the retreat
Yeah.
facilitator?
Sometimes the feeling is, the feeling could be like adventure exploration. That's
Yeah.
a really good one. The feeling was, like the one in Fiji, the whole retreat, the feeling was like, we want to change the world. So it was all about changing the world and that ripple effect. The feeling could be, clarity, confidence. It could be creativity. I know these are not necessarily feelings, but they're kind of feelings,
It could be
creative, just
juicy.
exploring. Yes. Sometimes it's giving back. The whole retreat is focused on giving back. It could be the feeling of calm and peace. So a
Mhm.
retreat where you're doing that deep calming work and such. Relaxation. You could have a retreat where the whole goal is to like rest and rejuvenate and relax. So
And you could have one on self-love. How great would that
mhm.
be? Just a complete retreat on self-love, like self-adulation. There's not enough of that. We're usually
No, there's
so
definitely
hard on
not.
ourselves as business owners. We're way harder on ourselves than we are on anyone else. So having a space where we could actually really celebrate our wins and
Mm.
celebrate all our,
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. That would be fun.
that would be fun. Maybe that's something we need to develop here. The self-love, grow your business retreat. Um, well, I love the idea of a retreat advancing your business. And you've already suggested some ways that happens because you're fulfilling it with your current customers, but you're also prospecting. You're bringing in new people who you'll probably love working with, because
Right.
usually most of them are brought in through other people, though some may come through social media, etc. So that was something that you pointed out. And also the opportunity to hit a really powerful result and make it happen in just a few days, to have that done with you. So it actually gets done, but it gets done with ease, without struggle. So these are
Right.
some powerful ways that we can advance our business and help our clients. As we wrap up, what would be some other things you would want the audience to know about how having a retreat actually will advance your business and advance the people who you serve too?
Right. Well, one of the ways, I mean, clearly, to advance your business, sales is important. And a retreat is the perfect sales vehicle because, when people go to a retreat, they have an incredible experience. They learn about you, they connect with you, they learn about they meet this community. And the biggest issue when people leave a retreat is kind of that letdown. They're going home and it's like suddenly they're cooking their own food and there is nobody around and they kind of have that letdown. So when you make an offer for a continuous program, whether it's coaching, whether it's a mastermind, a series of retreats, you're giving people that community to take with them. You're giving them that integration so that they don't get that letdown. They know what the next thing is. So like sales conversions at a retreat could be 50 to 100% because the people already love what they got and they want more of it. So, even sometimes it's funny because I decided not to make any kind of offer at this past retreat because I really wanted it to be about the experience. Yet everybody connected there and they were all buying from each other, which was really cool. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just sit here and get affiliate commission, because they got to know each other. It's like, oh, you do this. I really like this. I mean, I think everybody interacted. So it's a great way for both the attendees and the host to really showcase what they do. And you're not really selling it. People are coming to you and asking to buy it.
So it's creating a marketplace that doesn't feel like a marketplace at
Mhm.
all. It just
Right.
feels like a collaborative space in which people
Exactly.
can share what they have, what their great gifts are, and folks are asking for it, and there's not this feeling of being sold to.
Hmm.
I think that for me is a big difference in a retreat versus a conference. The conference is so often there's so much emphasis on the sales pitch that may
Right.
last
Yeah.
for
There's a
quite a
whole
while.
set
But
thing where.
retreat, that's gonna be minimal. It'll be
Mhm.
there, but it'll be minimal, and because people have already had such an amazing time, they're actually probably going to be asking for the sales pitch.
Right. Yeah, that's what I say. It's one of those places where people want to buy your high ticket offer before you've even made it. So they're kind of
It's
asking, oh,
beautiful.
how
It's
do I get back to this?
so good. That is a wonderful, incredible, actually final point for us to make here with this discussion of the retreats. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of the show, actually, now, Lori, because we get to give something away. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not, but no worries, because you can let me know later what it is. If you know what it is already, we'll share it. But everybody listening, I want you to get your pen or pencil and write this particular URL down, because this is where you're going to go to get access to the Bold Badass Business Freebie Vault. And in there, we have our VIP sponsors at the top. Grab all their goodies that they're sharing. And then we have all our guests and all the episodes represented with their gift for you as well. It is at bit.ly/free from Dr. B. Let me repeat that, bit.ly/free from Dr. B, which is DRB. All right. And when you go in there, you'll have access to all of that. So Lori, without telling us the URL, because we're going to put that inside the vault, what would you like to give? Do you know what you'd like to give, or do you want to think about it and we'll just
Sure.
ask?
Yeah, I would like to give, I actually have an ebook about if you're thinking of hosting a retreat, what are some of the, I forget the exact title of it, but thinking of hosting retreats, 7 things you like to know. And then after you get that ebook, you can actually schedule a call with me to kind of go over, if you're thinking of hosting a retreat, we kind of put together a little plan, like, okay, this is what might work for you. We don't plan the whole thing, but we give you some ideas of where you might want to host it, what the purpose would be. We kind of go through your why and create that into a retreat event. So it's kind of a retreat planning call.
Perfect. And so we're going to put Lori's wonderful ebook in there that's going to give you 7 things to think about as you think about having a retreat, and also that call included. We're going to be sure to put that into the freebie vault. And again, that will be at bit.ly/free from Dr. B. Well, Lori, you have given us a lot to think about today in a very short amount of time. We've been able to cover so much, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us how a retreat can advance our businesses and advance our customers so that they can really have what they want in life. They can reinvent themselves into whatever or whoever they want to become. Such a powerful message. Is there any last thought you'd like to leave with our listener?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'd like to leave, that, a retreat doesn't have to be hard. A lot of people say they don't want to host a retreat because it's hard. And when you have guidance, it could be easy, and you don't want to do it alone. Because I know I've been at events where I had to go, put toilet paper in the bathroom, and you don't want to be in the middle of some amazing presentation, transformative event, and have to stop and go get toilet paper. You want to have someone helping you there on your side. So
Absolutely. So have somebody there to assist you. Maybe you bring the recipe book, but they help with the cooking of everything, the preparation of everything in the retreat. I'm just using the recipe as a metaphor, y'all. But how important to have help as you do it, so you're not the only one having to do every piece of that. That would be highly stressful. I would imagine that would be incredibly stressful.
yes.
To have to do it all without a helper, without a sort of program project manager, if you will, retreat manager. So you all, it's time for us to close for today. And maybe you're not feeling like a bold badass. Maybe you're feeling like you had kind of a hard day. Maybe you're having the kind of day that Lori had when they had her drive 4 hours and then they fired her before she was giving her presentation. But she's evidence, and so am I, that you are indeed a bold badass. You've stayed with us here, you've learned, and we know that you're going to implement what you learned. Maybe you're not feeling like a bold badass, but you wouldn't have spent the time with us unless you were. This is Dr. Barnsley Brown signing off until next Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and I'll see you back for some more bold badassery. Thanks so much, Lori, for being on the show.